Hello and welcome to another episode of the Uncommon Energy Podcast. My name is Trainer Chip Ritchie, joined here as always by my co-host Azul GG. What's up, Azul? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. Chip just got done with Milwaukee Regionals where I managed to place top 16, which was cool. First day two of the extended season, and now I'm just staying at a friend's in between. Was it Milwaukee and NAIC, and then I'll be driving down to NAIC shortly here in a couple days, or Columbus for NAIC shortly here in a couple days. What about you, Chip? How was your Milwaukee experience? I didn't actually say what's up to you too often. I saw you like once throughout the whole tournament, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
we
just to
like
get the
barely.
dice.
I pretty much only saw you to give you the dice. I feel like
Yeah.
like maybe talked one other time, but yeah, it was a good experience. It was a busy weekend. I actually had a pretty terrible time as far as traveling goes getting to Milwaukee. My flight got delayed in the morning on Friday and it caused me to miss my connection. Then I had to get on standby for another flight, which I thankfully was able to get. If I hadn't gotten on standby, I was going to have to do another two segments of flying that night, so I would have had to have been on three different planes that day, which would have just been absolutely miserable. It would have been like a 14-hour travel day. It ended up not being the worst, but when I got to Milwaukee finally, my bag was not with me that I checked. So it was quite the headache. It ended up not getting there that night. They said they were going to put it on a later flight. Didn't end up happening. It actually went. So I flew from Raleigh to Philadelphia, got on standby, went Philadelphia to Milwaukee. My bag went from Raleigh to Philadelphia, Philadelphia to Charlotte, spent the night in Charlotte, and then went from Charlotte to Milwaukee finally on Saturday, and I got it Saturday evening. But all my clothes for casting and stuff were in my bag, so I literally had to go out and buy a new suit, a new jacket, new pants, new underwear, socks, like literally everything. I had to go buy a toothbrush. I had nothing at all. Was pretty annoying, but thankfully got it all figured out. And the games that we got to see this weekend were actually a lot of fun. So we're going to be spending a lot of time today talking about Milwaukee. Was really a great time. We saw some incredible matches on the stream. The meta is seeming, there's a lot of Palkia, obviously, but there's a lot of other cool stuff. It's still very early on in the meta. We're definitely getting in a spot where things are getting a little bit more defined, and I think we'll see that be fleshed out a little bit more this coming weekend at NAIC. But before we break down the topics, I also do want to mention something that we just started up, and that is the Highlights channel, a second channel here for the podcast here on YouTube that you guys should definitely check out. I'm going to be uploading some of the clips from the podcast here and there over on that channel. Go subscribe to it. The link will be in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. So if you ever don't watch the full podcast, you just want to catch a couple of highlights here and there, it's a good place to check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Today, got a couple things to talk about. Yeah, mostly going to be Milwaukee, but then talk about. We were both in Milwaukee. I was playing, as always, finally made it day two. Chip was casting. And then, yeah, Milwaukee, going to be the main thing we're talking about, of course. And we'll always have our Guess That Flavor Text segment later on after that. And then there is another huge tournament coming up this weekend in the North American International Championships, the biggest tournament of the year. Well, it's the biggest tournament of the year as far as player size goes. Worlds is the bigger tournament, but yeah, the
More
most
prestige, right?
yeah, the most populated tournament. NAIC will be this weekend. I'll be playing once again, and then I think it was just announced today, right, that you
Yes.
will be casting, right, Chip?
Yeah, it just got announced today. I'm super excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm very thankful that Pokemon keeps wanting to bring me out to these events. I really do enjoy it. I love the community, love the game, love getting to provide a voice for the game to anyone watching along at home. It's going to be a good time. Myself, Kyle Sablehouse, Skarzig, and also Frosted Caribou going to be joining the cast for the first time. So I'm excited to work with everyone. Going to be a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and break it down, get into Milwaukee. Now, you were there as a player, like we mentioned. You ended up getting, I think, 10th place, top 16 when it was all said and done. Why don't you just
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit before we talk about the results, about what you played, why you chose to play it? Because obviously, top 16, a super solid finish for like a 700 player tournament.
Yeah, so played Arceus, Flying Pikachu, B-Barrel. There was a Crobat VMAX in there as well for the Mew matchup, of course, and there's like some other like niche situations where the Crobat can be good. But of course, Flying Pikachu, Lightning type Pokemon, one hit KO's Palkia, can't be hit by basic Pokemon, so that's kind of your Reggie matchup as well, all in that one card. And then Arceus, such a great attacker by itself. Like it's just Arceus can cover so many situations, and then also played 2 Charon's Care and a Palpad, so pretty heavy on the healing on the Arceus as well. So a lot of just like there's a lot of stuff you can do with Arceus when you have Charon's Care with it. So played that and played it. We're gonna play Palkia and Teleon, but then we were kind of like Palkia and Teleon feels like a slightly uphill battle going into this tournament specifically. Like Palkia, there were just 8 Palkias in top 8 of the Melbourne Regional in Australia. I was like, well, a lot of people are gonna be taking for it. A lot of people are gonna be playing it. I don't know. It just felt like just kind of like a not a terrible choice to play Palkia and Teleon because obviously the deck still did very well and a ton of great players chose to play it, but it just kind of felt like I don't know. I just didn't want to take that uphill battle by playing it, so ran a spreadsheet on the win percentages for every deck in the format that we thought was relevant and what we would consider playing, and then also how much we expected each deck to be played at the tournament. And Arceus Flying Pikachu B-Barrel won the spreadsheet, so that's why I played Arceus Flying Pikachu B-Barrel. And tournament went, I mean, pretty well, right? I got 10th place, lost my win in on stream, or might have been a win in. I would have had to have tied the next round, which I might not have been able to do, and then I could have bubbled. So potential
Your resistance
win-in
was the best of the players in
Yeah.
at 31 match points.
So probably would have been in if I'd been able to get the ID on the following round. But yeah, day one made a pretty big. I went 6-2-1 from day 1 to day 2. My 2 losses were prizing a Flying Pikachu at one point against the Palkia, and then my other loss was I got a double prize penalty for not taking a prize card one time. So
this guy.
pretty much a little unlucky. My own mistakes, even my losses. Then I ID'd on the last round up against the Turbo Dark. But there was nothing too crazy that I hit in day 1. I hit, I believe, 2 Palkia and Teleons. I played against a Mew VMAX deck. Hit a Reggie. I hit man, what else did I play? The Turbo Dark on the win, or I ID'd against the Turbo Dark. I played against more Pico, hit and run more Pico deck, which was a pretty good matchup because I have Charon's Care and they do 150 and then I have Charon's Care and then go from there. They surprised me with a Raichu at one point. I didn't I assumed they had something else. They played more Pico VMAX. I was like they probably have something else in here. Surprised me with the Raichu at one point, but it wasn't enough for them to actually even get a game against me. So 2 of that as well. But yeah, nothing too. I didn't play against anything too like new or cool or interesting, to be honest. Like a lot of the expected meta, and the deck like handles all that really well. Like it won the it won the spreadsheet for a reason, so it can kind of beat all the expected decks reasonably well. I was hoping to dodge Stonejourner the whole day, which there was only 3 of them, or like maybe 4 of them in the tournament, so it wasn't too likely I hit them, even if I had the same record as some of them at some points. But I was really hoping to dodge the Stonejourner the whole day, and then into day 2, beat up on a couple Arceus Duraludons, hit another Palkia. And then I did lose on stream up against the Blissey Miltank, and then won. I forget. I'm forgetting one of my rounds. 2 Arceus Duraludons. Maybe it was 3 Arceus Duraludons I beat. I beat at least 2 Arceus Duraludons. I forget one of my last rounds, but yeah. And I ended up winning my last round in day 2 to get 31 points to end up at 10th place. So I mean, pretty good tournament overall, especially for not making a day 2 so far this season. Can't really complain. Would have liked to have gotten top 8, but I'll settle for the top 16.
And you weren't the only person in your testing group as well that made it into day 2. Both Kid Stark and Austin Benetheimer also played the exact same 60. I know Danny Altavilla and Caleb Gettimer both played it in day 1. Didn't quite make it into day 2. I think Caleb lost the winning in, right? So he was pretty close.
It was the round before that. Yeah, he lost. Okay. He did hit a Stonejourner.
Unfortunate. But yeah, so I mean, proof like 3 out of 5 of your group ended up making it into day 2 with the same 60s. Pretty solid conversion overall. Definitely seems like a solid play for the weekend. But yeah, let's break down kind of how the rest of the tournament shaped up. Look at the top 8 decks. The winning deck ended up being Arceus Duraludon, which I think was a deck people expected to show up at the tournament in some capacity. It's kind of just always been there ever since the start of the Brilliant Stars format. At least a little bit, made a few top 8s here and there, but I definitely wouldn't have expected it to win going into the weekend.
Yeah, I wouldn't have predicted it, but I'm like not too surprised. Sure. Like it's not like a shock to me. It's actually kind of funny. The way the last couple metas have developed, if I'm not mistaken, like the big hype deck was like the first initial most successful deck, and then the way our meta has trended has kind of followed Japan's meta. Usually when like I see people talking about decks to like play with or that are doing well in Japan. Like I heard about Blissey Miltank and Arceus Duraludon, like when Arceus Radiance or Astral Radiance first dropped, right?
Right.
And then Melbourne Regionals happened, and the hype deck and the deck that was doing well in all the online tournaments was just Palkia, right? It was just Palkia everywhere. And then all of a sudden we get to this regional, it's like, oh wait, Arceus Duraludon and Blissey Miltank are just good decks, and then they got first and second, right? And that kind of is just like the way that the way that the meta in Japan seemed to have developed as well. I think it's been that kind of way for like the last couple of formats where it's just like it's kind of just following their way, which kind of makes sense, right? If the good decks are good, they're going to do well, right? It doesn't matter who's playing them, right? So there's not too much of a difference between our metas, I guess overall is kind of what I'm getting at there. So
Mhm.
sometimes it does feel like there is a little bit of a separation, but it feels like we are it's like even though we know what's good in Japan right now, our meta still has to go through the same development that theirs went through. Even though we know Blissey Miltank and like Arceus are good decks over there, we still have to go through Palkia dominating initially to get to that point. You know what I'm saying? It's not like we just initially picked up Arceus and Miltank and everyone just like respected the decks immediately and everyone thought they were like amazing top tier decks. And
Mhm.
I think they're definitely more fragile than Palkia and Teleon in terms of how they can be countered. But it seemed like we still had to take that step that Japan already went through, even though Japan was showing us that these decks are definitely, contenders for like regional championships and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's almost like we're running two different simulations and getting the same results, right? We're plugging the
Yeah,
card pool
exactly.
into a player base determines what's best, and the meta kind of shifts similarly. That is definitely a good point. So Braden Elfert was the player that ended up winning. Was a pretty standard list for the most part. The
Yeah.
2 Hyper Potion, the 4 Crystal Cave has kind of become the thing. I would say the one big surprise was the 1 copy of Eldegoss V, which is not something anyone has really played. I don't think that I've seen, at least. I'm not sure if you have the Eldegoss V and Duraludon previous to this.
No, I've like ran into some people on ladder summons who have like a Crobat, and
Hmm.
even though Braden did win, I'm not sold on the Eldegoss because I feel like you open it like roughly like 8% of games. I think you just lose those 8% of those 8 games, like or that 8% of those 8%, right? Like I think you just lose those games. I don't understand how you wouldn't unless your opponent also bricks, right? So maybe a little bit less than 8% of games you just lose when you open the Eldegoss because up against any Arceus deck, Mew or Palkia, they can take such a huge advantage just by having that thing exist on the board. Like, obviously, like in like late game scenarios, or like to win the game by going to get a boss, which I'm sure they did a ton. Because
Yes.
actually, like Arceus Duraludon lines up super well to just be like boss, boss, boss. The problem is you don't have shady dealings or like B barrel or any way to draw your
Exactly.
bosses consistently. But then you have Eldegoss to be like, I'm gonna go find that third boss or fourth boss or whatever consistently for you. So it does kind of, maybe that win percentage you gain from having those bosses more consistently makes up for that percent of games that you open the Eldegoss, right? And then also like a percent of those your opponent might brick themselves, or you might just draw it hot enough that you can overcome the opening of the Eldegoss, right? Or an emergency Marnie or something like that. You never know, and that's going to help out as well. So I'm not sold on it. Definitely is a pretty big standout card to include like a deck like this, but yeah, like I said, Arceus Duraludon, super powerful deck. I like the rest of their list besides that as well. Just super straightforward, just trying to be consistent, which I think is like something that has kind of plagued Arceus Duraludon recently, is people are trying to get like too spicy with the lists. So like that's what holding it back. It's like overall success in like online tournaments and stuff.
Yeah, definitely very consistent. The 4 research, 3 Marnie. It's got 3 Pokegears in here to get a little bit more search as well. 4 split of the ball search cards, 1 evolution incense for just that 1 extra option to find Arceus V Star to Starbirth and get all set up. I didn't get to watch a ton of Braden's games this weekend. I did watch the game 2 and game 3 of top 8 up against Tord, and then obviously the finals. And Tord won game number 1. And then game number 3 came down to a Roxanne from Tord, and Braden drew into a quick ball in order to go get Eldegoss to go get the boss's orders to win the game. So, I mean, I think the reason that the Eldegoss is good, like you said,
Yeah,
with not having Inteleon, not having Bibarel to fill your hand back up, you have a searchable option to go get you that last piece. And specifically with Roxanne being a new inclusion in pretty much all of the Palkia decks, Inteleon did prove to be the more popular version of Palkia, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. All of them playing one Roxanne at least, it seemed like, and also Palpad in addition to that. If you just keep some quick balls around, if you keep some ultra balls around, you have pretty reasonable outs to find it off of the 2 cards plus your draw for turn. So you can Ultra Ball to go get it, or you can Quick Ball to go get it as well. So, and then, yeah, so that's how Brayden actually won game number 2. And then in game 3, Tord prized his Roxanne and didn't have an opportunity to try to put him to the low hand size and swing. Because that's really the strategy for the Palkia player in that matchup. It does feel like Palkia can win, but Duraludon seems pretty solid. I don't know exactly what the percentage would be for this matchup, Palkia versus Duraludon VMAX. It seems close, though.
Yeah, I guess I got to give Arceus on the edge, I think, overall. Really low bench size, 2 KOs back and forth, and like, if you catch a Palkia player without a choice belt or without the quick shooting in play for too long, like, the Hyper Potion just like completely removes one of their attacks from the turn, right? So I think you definitely have to give the edge to the Duraludon, at least slightly, even with the inconsistencies of something like Arceus Duraludon. I mean, as long as you can get to the Starbirth, which is something that like the Palkia player, especially Palkia and Inteleon, really can't stop you from getting to Starbirth, like kind of like the Turbo Palkia list kind of can. Like they can get like that KO on your Arceus before you get to Starbirth. I feel like Palkia and Inteleon is not going to really stop you from getting to Starbirth too often, which will just usually lead to you getting your Starbirth, getting your turn to attack, setting up your Duraludons, and then from there, as long as you find a Hyper Potion, you'll usually win the prize trade overall. And then yeah, that is another big reason to like that the Eldegoss is probably pretty good. It's just that yeah, when you get Roxanne, maybe it's a boss for game, maybe it's research, whatever it might be. You actually have a more consistent way to find something to do for your turn instead of just being like, well, I guess I lose because I got Roxanne and my deck doesn't have a onboard draw engine, which like Inteleon isn't quite an onboard draw engine, but we play so many level balls and evolution instances and ultra balls, going to get a piece for shady dealing isn't too difficult after you get Roxanne. But something like Arceus Duraludon doesn't have anything on board, so a quick ball or an ultra ball becoming a Eldegoss, that's not too bad, right? So definitely feels like that is definitely a huge help now that we have Roxanne.
And then second place player was Connor Lavelle playing the Blissey Miltank. We talked about how this is something that has been pretty popular in Japan. And you mentioned this last week on the podcast. Blissey's kind of just been a deck that's been around here and there, kind of a joke deck ever since it came out in Chilling Rain. But doesn't really feel like anyone spent time with it in the last format. But even before it got Miltank and Greninja and Switching Cart in this set, which are all big boosts to it, it got double turbo energy in Brilliant Stars, which is almost even a bigger deal because your damage can just really ramp up super quickly and it synergizes incredibly well with Hyper Potion.
Yeah. Actually, it kind of makes me wish I had tried Blissey out last format because like when DT dropped, I didn't try out Blissey at all. But like when the little testing I had done with Blissey leading up to this regionals was like, yo, DT is like insane with Hyper Potion. Like you're able to ramp up your Blissey so much faster because you're only getting rid of 1 energy card per Hyper Potion you use to heal that Blissey, and then you're just like putting 3 more energy back on it immediately. So it allows you to ramp up so much faster, so much more consistently with your Blissey's, making them such a bigger threat so much sooner. So it kind of makes me wish I had tried out Blissey last format with before Astral Radiance had even come out. I think it could have been pretty good. I'm not thinking of any decks specifically off the top of my head that you would just get demolished by. So the Blissey could have been pretty good last format, to be honest. I don't know. I can't think of like anything off the top of my head, but it was basically just like Mew and Arceus decks, right? Like that's all there was. So, and your Arceus matchup's pretty good in general with Blissey Miltank because the Hyper Potion allows you to, pretty much fully heal away a Trinity Nova, and then you just start swinging and building up a massive Blissey pretty fast. So, I mean, Mew, you always got, like, your Mew matchup didn't change with this set at all either, right? Like, nothing really changed for your Mew matchup. You have a Blissey, but they have Max Miracle, so it still comes down to, like, path kind of sticking as being your main win condition at some point, right? And Yveltal can sometimes do some funky stuff, but usually doesn't completely lock your opponent out of the game, especially if you don't combo that with, like, a second Yveltal or Crushing Hammers that a lot of people play when you're just kind of the more straightforward build. It kind of does just come down to the path, so I actually wonder if Blissey was maybe just also just pretty good last format as well. But yeah, the DT is huge for sure. It might even be the most, like, out of those cards, it might be actually the most impactful card for the deck to have.
So you played versus Connor on stream in round 13. Like we mentioned, if you guys did miss that and want to go watch Azul's game, it was streamed. You can find it on the official Pokemon YouTube channel during the day 2 stream. Just go scroll until you found round 13. But for anyone who missed it, who doesn't want to go watch it, you want to just give us a quick little recap of kind of how those games went, because it did go to a 3-game set.
Yeah. So that was effectively the winning in. Connor ID'd after that and was able to make top 8. If I had beaten Connor, I would have ID'd most likely. Maybe would have tried to find out my resistance, and then if I knew it was pretty good, I probably would have ID'd as long as my opponent was down 2. But if not, I guess I would have had to have beaten them. So, yeah. So I played against Connor effectively on the winning in, and then game 1, the way it played out, I was pretty much in full control the whole time, and
I guess maybe talk about how, like, in theory, going into the matchup, you felt like it would work, because you guys were also prepared for this. You played one specific card, it feels like, for the potential stalemates that could occur, right?
Yeah, so I had played against a Blissey Miltank earlier in the tournament as well. And what you do in the matchup, the reason we play the Shauna, is that up against Blissey Miltank, if they have a Miltank in the active, you can hit it with B-Barrel and Crobat, but they're not reliable attackers into Miltank, especially with how much healing they play. And then if you do attack, and the list doesn't play a ton of bosses, or it plays like 2 boss and a pal pad, so we can boss quite a few times. But then if they're building up a big Blissey on the bench, you can boss it and hit it, but they can also just like retreat it and heal it. So like there's no reliable way to like continuously pressure the Blissies in the deck. So the main win condition of the deck becomes deck out for both players. So I sit there and I use Flying Pikachu with the Max Balloon, and they sit there with Miltank and draw pass. So what happens is, depending on how the game goes, one player will eventually draw more cards than their opponent. Because you both they still want to be aggressive with Blissey early, and you want to be aggressive with Arceus early to force the opponent into the Miltank, and for them to force me into the Flying Pikachu. So the tiebreaker card for that kind of stalemate scenario, once I get into the Flying Pikachu and they send up their Miltank, is comes down to who decks out. So we included a copy of Shauna, which allows me to shuffle my hand into my deck and draw 5 cards. Now we do play Marnie, which is effectively a shuffle draw supporter. For when you deck out, you can shuffle your whole hand, which is like 30-40 cards, your whole deck at that point, shuffle that, put it down, and then draw 5 of it. But the problem with that is it also shuffles your opponent's hand and puts that back in the deck as well. So if your opponent was winning on deck out, when you deck out and you play Marnie, they're still winning on the deck out race.
And Marnie actually puts +1 card in their deck compared to what you get, right? You're effectively going -2 to the deck out race, right? Because you're losing the Marnie and drawing 1 more card.
Yeah, but when you play the Shauna, you only shuffle your hand into your deck. And Blissey generally plays 1 to 2 Marnie, so I'd play a Shauna, then they'd have to play a Marnie, then I'd play a Shauna, then they'd have to play a Marnie, and then at that point you'd be ahead on the deck out race. So that was basically the game plan and the reason behind playing the Shauna in the Flying Pikachu deck. And it worked. I used it that's the other deck I played in day 2 was a different Blissey. I played against 2 Blissey Miltanks in day 2. It worked against the other Blissey Miltank because they didn't play Tornadus. But up against Connor, that worked in game 1. And the way that Connor played game 1, I thought, now the whole time, Connor did play the Tornadus, which allows Connor to move my Flying Pikachu to the bench, and then bosses orders it back up to the active and hit it. And if Connor has enough energy on a Blissey, like we saw in Game 3, it'll one-hit KO my Flying Pikachu, removing my only real threat from the board, right, depending on the scenario. And that's what happened in Game 3. It was my only threat on the board, because I was trying to win Game 3 instead of tie Game 3, so I didn't set up more Pokemon on the bench, because I knew that Connor played a ton of bosses orders. So Connor could win the game, completely ignore my Flying Pikachu if I put too many prize cards on board, and just set up a massive Blissey and just go boss, and KO everything around my Pikachu, right? Especially with Hyper Potions healing it all the time. So even when I'm hitting it with the Flying Pikachu, I'm not pressuring it enough to make it so it can't just boss again on the next turn and KO more stuff. So in game 1, Connor played through most of their deck and didn't have an answer for my Flying Pikachu. So I thought Connor was bluffing that they played something like Escape Rope, and was like playing as if they had Escape Rope, but then they were like, at the end of it all, they were just like, okay, I'll concede, right? So they concede game 1. In game 2, Connor was actually able to win game 2 because I had to put too many Pokemon in play to be able to get the Flying Pikachu set up, that Connor was able just to boss the prize cards off my bench. So I wasn't able to win game 2, and I didn't see the Tornadus in game 2 either because Connor was able to avoid using it. And then in game 3, I had the clean board state, and actually Connor, I think, made a misplay by actually hitting my Arceus, which allowed me to then Charon's Carrot and go to Lone Flying Pikachu, completely eliminating Connor's chance to win the game. So at that point, Connor took away their own win condition. And if Connor just sits behind a Miltank for the whole game, the game always ties. So Connor always had that as an out to just sit behind a Miltank, right? Or for the most part, if Connor had just played around sitting behind Miltanks, maybe healing them if I do attack with the Crobat or whatever. But if I bench the Crobat, then all of a sudden Connor could win with the Tornadus. So if Connor just like sits behind Miltanks and doesn't hit my Arceus, Connor always has like that option of just setting up a huge Blissey on the bench, forcing me to have constantly have boss's orders to bring it up over and over and over again until I run out of boss, and then eventually build up an actual huge Blissey on the bench that I can't boss up anymore, and then comes up and can do the Tornadus play and KO my Pikachu or KO my Arceus and then chase boss's order, whatever other Pokemon I had put in play at that point. But Connor actually hits my Arceus with the route, and then I actually am able to go to a board state of lone flying Pikachu. But I didn't know that Connor played Tornadus at that point because they didn't use it in game 1 or 2. So I was like, okay, I can either sit here and guarantee the tie, but I can never win the deck out war because we didn't have enough time to win. We didn't have enough time for me to do the Shauna thing and actually win the deck out war because Connor played 2 Marnie. So like, we didn't have enough time left for Connor to draw through their deck 2 times or 3 times because
Right.
basically no cards have been played at that point. So I was like, okay, I can either. I don't think Connor plays it out. I think they were bluffing in game 1. I know they don't have Echoing Horn or anything, so I can put my Crobat in play here, attack with Crobat, pressure this Miltank, force Connor to play the game by putting Blissies and Miltanks in play. And I was pretty sure at that point that Connor only played the 1 Miltank, but I wasn't quite sure if they had another one or not. But I was like, just force more Pokemon in play by poisoning with the Crobat. I was actually going to try and set up B-Barrel to swing with that as well, but Connor did boss KO my Bidoof, and the other one was Prize, so wasn't able to set up the B-Barrel. So I was like, I'm just going to go that route because I don't think Connor has an out. So even if I put the Crobat VMAX in play, the Pumpkaboo and the Bidoof in play, that's only 5 prize cards on board. So even if Connor boss KOs all of those Pokemon, I can still just go to Lone Flying Pikachu and just use Fly or Max Balloon, and they can never win. So my idea was that Connor could never win the game, and I could maybe win the game. But the expected outcome at that point for me was it'll probably still be a tie. So we start going through it, and then eventually Connor builds up a massive Blissey on the bench, like what is what I expected. Connor was just going to try and pressure my bench Pokemon no matter what. You might as well, right? If I'm going to play the game, they also have to play the game. But then it turns out Connor did play the Tornadus, which pushes my Pikachu to the bench, allows him to boss it back into the active, and then knock it out. And at that point, I had no other threats on board because I didn't plan to build up any other threats because I was like, I'm not going to put any more Pokemon in play because then I will lose the game if Connor just has boss, boss, boss or something like that. So I didn't actually want to bench any more Pokemon than the Crobat, the Pumpkaboo, and the Bidoof because then Connor could actually win by bossing 6 prize cards off the bench. So I just wanted to just bench those. If Connor can boss KO all 3 of those, that's fine. I just continue using Max Balloon and it ends up in a tie. And if not, then I probably win because I assumed Connor didn't have an out. But the Tornadus was there, and it worked just as Connor had planned, so I ended up losing to Connor in game 3 there. So I could have guaranteed the tie as soon as turn like 3 when I Challenge carried my Arceus. But I was like, I didn't think Connor had an out there, so I may as well play for the win. Because no matter what, at that point, to me, with the information I had, I was like, it's either a tie or a win for me if I just don't overbench. I didn't overbench, but yeah, Tornadus got the dub in the end. So really close set against Connor. It was a pretty exciting one, and yeah, it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, it almost seemed like you were laughing on the stream whenever he played the Tornadus down. It's like, come on, man, really? Like, we're playing this card, and it ended up working out. And I think it was actually just like a pretty solid card for Connor on the weekend. To be honest, he talked about it I interviewed him the first time he got on for an interview. I think after top 8, I believe, and or I guess the second time maybe. But anyway, yeah, I was just talking to him about it, and he said, in the animal kingdom there are herbivores and carnivores. I call Blissey a Sobblevore, and Sobble just like loves to chase down, or Blissey just loves to chase down the Sobbles with the powerful colorless energy. Tornadus is one of the things that can let you do that. Of course, 4 bosses orders as well. Just take those quick prizes and slow your opponent's setup down a lot. And throw a bunch of energies onto Blissey. I don't know, man. The Blissey, I definitely like. I don't know that I would have expected it to make it all the way to the finals. I wouldn't have been surprised to see one in top 8, but it really does seem like a pretty solid deck. And we can talk a little bit more later about what that means for the NAIC meta. But yeah, congratulations to Connor on getting second.
Yeah, for sure. No, it definitely seems like it's solid. Like I said, I wasn't really surprised by either of them making top 8. The Arceus or the Blissey, or making the finals, Arceus or Blissey. Like both those decks, like it's not like if you had asked me if I thought they would have at the beginning of the event, I'd been like,
Right,
nah.
right.
But like the fact they did wasn't a huge surprise. But one deck that was definitely not a huge surprise that made top 8, and there was 3 of them, was the Palkia and Talion, of course. 3 of them in top 8, and they were all pretty different. But all like all the differences were like they were all powerful cards still. I feel like at the end of the day. So we
Yeah,
had
so they were
Franco.
all Palkia
Uh,
Inteleon. There wasn't any
yeah,
Turbo
yeah, no
Palkia.
turbo.
It was all based on Inteleon, but the card choices from each of the players was quite different. So Franco made top 4 with cross switchers and rare candy in his deck. Rare candy is actually a card if you look at any Japanese list. It feels like they are all playing one copy of rare candy, and Franco's a Japanese American. And he, I know, communicates and talks a lot with the top level Japanese players. So I'm not at all surprised to see that that's a card he chose to play. And I watched him
Yeah,
utilize it pretty decently as well. Just go rare candy into double shady dealings. It's kind of just like random when you have it and can use it because you don't really ever want to shady dealings out the rare candy. It feels like, you know,
yeah.
you can Irida for it, I guess, is one of the decent reasons for it. But and then yeah, Torrid Reklev was in top 8 as well. He did lose to Braden, who won the event in top 8. But Tord was playing 4 Irida. He also had a couple of other interesting techs in there. The one Nessa, one copy of Cheryl as well. Cheryl's also a card that Franco was playing. And then Riley Holbert was the other Palkia player in top 8. And his was kind of just a more
Aggressive for
traditional,
sure.
I guess, in deck. Just didn't play Irida as opposed. So 0
Yeah.
Irida and just used the researches, Marnie's, Roxanne. Also had a Crobat V in there to draw cards. So yeah, I mean, all 3 of the decks are pretty different. What are your thoughts on the 3 different ones? Is Franco's with the cross switcher and the rare candy the best one since it made top 4, or do you prefer one of the other 2?
I don't know. There's not like it's so hard to tell. It's like the deck is so powerful and versatile as it is. It's like I
You
don't
can
know.
almost just put whatever you want with it, maybe like.
Like Irida guarantees you the card draw. Cross switchers let you do like other stuff while you like also gust something in the same turn. Like you play a research or something alongside it, and that's what we saw. I guess we could mention it while we're talking about Palkia. Like Bradner and crew played like probably the most aggressive Palkia list I think I've seen so far.
Yeah.
4 battle VIP pass, 4 cross switchers, right? Like there's so many ways to play it and so many ways people are playing it. Like, is one better than the other? The Cheryl seems pretty good as kind of a maybe kind of like a mirror match breaker, but like Riley played the Leon, which is also like a mirror match breaker kind of card. You know what I'm saying? Like something to put you over the edge in the mirror match. Like Leon's really good at that. Cheryl sounds pretty good in the mirror match, but maybe a little bit better against stuff like the Arceus, Duraludon, where it's kind of a 2-hit KO situation going back and forth. I don't know. They're all good. Uh, which one's best? I'm not like really too sure. I mean, I don't really have like a too strong of a preference over any of the cards. All the cards are good. The rare candy specifically, I think, is specifically like played because when you go first, if you whiff turn 1 Palkia, you can still turn 2 candy attack with Inteleon. Like if you could just get an attachment on a Sobble, I think it's the main reason that that's
Okay.
included in the Japanese list is that you can go like turn 1 attach a Sobble, turn 2 Irida, Candy, and Teleon, and you at least get to attack turn 2 more often because of that than just sitting there and being like, well, I guess I'll keep calling for some more Sobbles or something. But I don't know. I mean, what about you? How much Palkia have you played? Do you have like a favorite of these or like cards you like? I think Tord also played Starmie, right? So that's like another thing to mention. Maybe Starmie was
Yeah,
not in all the decks for sure.
another difference for sure. Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten to play with any of them yet. So I haven't worked through which one of the variants I enjoy the most. I mean, I think just looking at it on paper, to me, I would lean towards the Riley Holbert build with the researches. I just am not the biggest fan of Irida. I don't know. I've gone back and forth on it a little bit. Like the games last the Palkia mirrors and like, or if you're going up against Palkia versus Mew or something like that, the games just don't last that many turns. So it's like you can afford to play Irida. You just need the one research to bail you out. You just need specific pieces. But with so many of the other decks being out there, you're kind of okay just playing the more traditional supporters, having the one-shot option in the Leon. I don't know. I mean, I think you could definitely play just a combination of all of these lists as well, and it would do just fine. That's the thing about Palkia. The card is so powerful. You know, you've got your base 50 cards or whatever. Those last 10, obviously, like, I mean, maybe it comes down to preference a little bit, or like which specific thing in the meta you
Yeah.
expect a little bit more of, like how necessary will cross switchers be versus how nice would it be to have the healing option. So I don't know. I think it'll just kind of depend if you're preparing for to play Palkia Inteleon for NAIC. It just kind of depends on what you think the other decks will look like.
I think it's gonna be one of the problems going to NAIC though. There's gonna be so many different decks. I think this is like this tournament opened up the meta like even more. I think Mew has been kind of on like there wasn't like that a ton of Mew at this event. I'm actually curious to know its actual overall meta percentage, but I think it's going to be a lot more diverse going to NAIC. I think Palkia and Teleon is the deck that you have to beat, but I think we're getting to the point where you could take a loss to Mew, to be honest. Like I think we're getting there. Obviously, you don't want to, but
All right,
if you
and
can beat
so we know
literally
Azul's playing Mew for NAIC this
if
weekend.
you can beat literally everything else, or pretty much, like, or get like 50-50 or greater against everything else, but take a hard loss to Mew, hit me up. I want to see that deck list.
It definitely we are at
Go
the
ahead.
point where Mew is the least countered for sure, which is kind
Yeah,
of weird. It's the least countered, and it's also not. It wasn't super heavily played. It did pretty decently. There were still people playing it. There was a decent amount in day two, but a lot of people really were hype on the Intelli or the Palkia, I should say. It felt like. Um,
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like a lot of the best players in the game chose to play Palkia and Teleon, right? And that matchup is fine for Palkia. So unless a lot of the best players in the game, which there's
I
only so many best players in the game, also played Mew,
I don't
then
know if I'm
you'll see
really
that
gonna.
kind of come out.
I don't know if I'm gonna be really content calling the matchup fine. When I've watched so many of them play out, it literally comes down to Roxanne Path. Is literally what it
Yeah,
feels like the matchup comes down to. So if you
but
can
it's like
just,
a 50-50 at that point still.
I think if you play Mew with trekking shoes and Pumpkaboo, you have plenty of dig slash outs to get out of that lock.
It's possible. I still think it's pretty close. Mew is like Mew has awkward draws early where like sometimes you just expend too much in one direction or another. I think Palkia plays a term that I've been using a lot recently is just plays more games in terms of like your deck has to be powerful enough to actually win games, but if your deck is, the more games you play, the more chances you have to win, right? So that's why I'm like a still that's why I was a big fan of playing the Arceus deck this weekend because I felt like I just played a lot of games of Pokemon, right? I wasn't going, okay, Genesect, no VIP pass, I'll pass. You know what I'm saying? So I just felt like I was playing more games of Pokemon than pretty much most of my opponents, and just more consistent games of Pokemon too. Because I played like I would play a couple of the Arceus Duraludon players I played against. They would draw Marnie and be like, "Well, I hit nothing. I'll pass." And then I'd be able to, I have like the leverage of like the Ultra Ball or the Quick Ball for the Crobat. A little bit extra draw power, like stuff like that, B
Yeah,
Barrel, whatever. So
you
like I just
get
felt
to
like I played
play
a lot
more
of
of your
games.
games. Yeah, for
Yeah, I
sure.
feel like Palkia and Teleon plays a couple more games than Mew, right? So that's going to be at your advantage as well. It's like those games where the Mew player just bricks, you're also just going to win those games as well. And then if the rest of them are 50-50, you actually come out on the advantage at the end of that, right? So I don't know. I think it's pretty close. Yeah, a lot of it is Roxanne Pat, a lot of Roxanne Path, but even then though the matchup's still pretty close to 50-50, I think.
And speaking of Mew, there was a player who got top four with the Mew, which is Chris Nudsvig or Knudsvig. Sorry, I thought it was just Nudsvig at first, and then I asked him how to pronounce his name. He was like, "Yeah, it's weird. You do pronounce the K." So Knudsvig getting
That's
top
great.
four with the Mew VMAX. Nothing super spicy in this list. I would say like the biggest thing to take away is the decision to play a 3-3-3 split of the like turbo items. We talked about this a little bit last week, right? The
Yeah, did
3
who did this?
Cramomatic, 3 Rotom Phone, and 3 Trekking Shoes.
Yeah, one of the players in Australia did this, right? Didn't they do a
Yeah.
3-3-3? Yeah. Um, yeah, it just looks so weird. Like I'm pretty sold on Cramomatic being the best of the three, to be honest. Like you just get heads, you can turn any item card into just the game-winning card. Like I'm
Right.
pretty convinced that Cramomatic is just. It also like thins out Battle VIP passes, which is like one of Mew's potential struggles. You have the quick balls, you have the ultra balls. Those can discard anything, obviously, but being able to discard two cards with Ultra Ball and then this other card in the Battle VIP pass with the Cramomatic, and then potentially getting heads and getting any card you want out of your deck. Wow, that's pretty good. So yeah, I'm pretty sold on you should max Cram before the other two. But I mean Mew's Mew. They chose with gold boss over catcher, that was the biggest surprise to me. Like I was pretty sold on catcher being
Yeah.
the way to go, but coming through with the boss, the good old boss, that's cool to see because like I would prefer not to play catcher if I'm going to play Mew. I'm still pretty convinced that because of the Palkia matchup, you don't want to be KOing a Sobble turn one going second. You want to be KOing a Palkia.
Yeah, we saw Rowan Stavenaw in the on the stream in round 14 up against Tord on the winning in, and he was playing the 3 Pokemon catchers in the
Yeah.
list, and also had the Pumpkaboo in there. So in that match, I don't know if you've watched any of the streamed games or anything yet, but it came they went to game 3, and in game 3 Rowan whiffed the tablet to get the first 2 prize KO, and then from there Tord was just able to actually pull ahead. Didn't even have to rely on Roxanne Path. He just was able to like take 6 prizes naturally before Rowan was able to, because he got the first 2 prize knockout.
Yeah, man, that can just kind of happen sometimes in the matchup for sure. But yeah, I think the catch, like, you need to force that 2 prize knockout. That's why I think the catcher is so important, right? You don't want to be KOing Sobble or Manaphy or whoever else they kind of just threw into the active. And the talking about the deck, that was probably the biggest surprise for me. Not just because of the fact that it's in top 8, but how it did in the tournament in general is actually Arceus and Teleon. Now, I think a lot of its results for day 2, there's a very solid group of players who chose to play the deck, and it was most of them that were kind of carrying the results for Arceus and Teleon for the most part. One of them is Justin Kulas, who made top 8 and had a pretty unfortunate top 8 matches, I think is what I heard on stream. I heard it did not go well for Justin.
No, it did not. In game number 1, game 1 was over in literally 2 minutes. Justin goes start Sobble, attach, pass, and Connor kind of plays his turnout normally and has a decision between he has like a Greninja active, I think, has the Blissey. He needs one of the 3 switch outs that Connor had. He had the 2 switch carts and the 1 scoop up net, and then he also had the 4 powerful colorless energy, which he actually prized a powerful colorless energy, so he only had 3 available in the deck, and he had a decision of, okay, do I just try to set up and sit on this like pretty sizable hand that I like that he'd built up after using concealed cards, and go for the Avery to just draw 3 cards, or do I go for the Marnie and see more cards and reset my opponent's hand whenever they just went Sobble pass? And so I think Connor made the correct decision of just being willing to play it a little slower and just set up a little bit more, played the Avery to just draw 3, and off of the 3, 2 of the 3 cards were Switch Cart and Powerful Colorless Energy to just knock out the Sobble. It was pretty rough for Justin, for sure.
Yeah, definitely sounds like the correct play in the situation, and sometimes you're rewarded with the what you needed off the extra cards anyways. But yeah, that was the biggest surprise with me, was kind of the resurgence of Arceus and Teleon a little bit. Like I said, only 1 in top 8, and Justin did lose in top 8, but there was a couple more on winning ins, like Gabe, I believe beat Isaac Molaski on the winning in and then bubbled out at 9th, so we could have seen 2 Arceus and Teleon in top 8. Who knows where things changed from there.
Yeah, and Pram got top 32 with it as well, right?
Yeah, Pram was in top 32. I'm trying to think if there's any other one else that I remember.
I don't remember how Pablo did exactly. I don't think
Pablo didn't make day 2. I think Pablo actually played Palkia though. I think Pablo played Palkia and Teleon.
No, okay.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so part of that group, I believe, but chose to go with a different deck on the day.
Got it.
But yeah, that was like the biggest surprise to me. I think more so than even something like the finals being Blissey Duraludon, like kind of the resurgence of Arcantel. I just didn't expect that to happen. Now that group has played Arcantel for the last couple events, so maybe is it just their pet deck and they just want to keep rocking with it, or can it actually keep up with Palkia Intel? Like, is it actually worth it to reconsider it? I'm not too sure, to be honest.
Well, I mean, Arceus is just probably one of the best attackers, if not the best attacker in the game. Since it's colorless, you can do so much with it. You can put it with so many different types of decks. It's got the most powerful V-Star power, with the Starbirth getting you any 2 cards, setting up whatever you want. And if you throw a big charm on it, it has 310 hit points, and Palkia can't get to 310. You can also limit your own bench. In the matchup, you could theoretically get to a situation where you just have like a couple Arceus and try to Sharon's Care, heal, and stuff like that, I guess. And the what was still heavy on the Sharon's Care had 2 copies of it with the Pal Pad as well.
Yeah. Oh, Joao was one of the other players playing Arceus and Teleon. But they chose to play I think they had the Raikou in there. So they had a Raikou and a Basic Lightning, so a little bit different. The other ones were just playing straight Arceus Intel, just water energy. So had the Raikou in there, so felt a little bit less confident in the Palkia matchup, obviously, than the other players who chose to bring it. But
the only new card,
surprising in general.
Yeah, the only new card in this deck is Roxanne. So it's like literally Justin took his top 4 deck from Secaucus Regionals and was like, yeah, I'm going to add this pretty good Roxanne card. Maybe he rolled up to the tournament and was like, ooh, this is the Regionals promo. I'm just going to slip this in here. Seems good, right?
Oh, I forgot to get my swag at the tournament.
Oh my gosh, how do you forget to get your swag?
Because you don't get it at you way back, like a season before the last season we had before COVID, you'd get it as you like entered the tournament, and now you have to like go pick it up. You have to go out of your way to go get it.
You're just putting money back in the organizer's pocket, bro.
I know. I completely did not cross my mind. I don't think anyone in my room remembered to go get it, to be honest. No one ever had any swag with them, so yeah, definitely did not.
Roxanne Regionals promo is probably like $50 on eBay, something like that.
No shot. There's no way it's 50.
I don't know. It's probably it's going to be the only regionals that had the Roxanne promo, I guess, unless Melbourne had it as well, because there's only 2 regionals in this format. Whatever regionals happen next, it'll be for the next set. So, I don't know. Who knows? It's a good card. But
So
anyway, yeah. So I think that breaks up the top 8, rounds things out. We did hit the under on the Palkias. We set the over under at 3.5. We both said 3 Palkias, and yeah, sure enough, there were 3
it was 3.
Palkias. 2 Arceus Duraludons, of course. We talked about Braden, who won the tournament. Also, got to give props to Frank Mintmeyer, who got top 8 with it as well.
Has that list is that list out there yet? I don't know if I haven't seen it yet. Is it that different? There's no Eldegoss, I assume,
It
but
is not out there, no. The
okay.
2 lists, Frank's is the only top 8 one not posted. Franco's is not on Limitless yet, but he did post it on Twitter, I believe.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, that wraps up the top 8. But there was, of course, other interesting decks running around. We saw a lot of cool things on the stream. We saw Alex Kreckler with his Charizard deck. We saw, the Lightning Toolbox deck from Ming, who was playing the like Zekrom Flaffy Raichu deck, which was a pretty cool one. We saw a Turbo Dialga deck on the stream in day 2. So there's still a pretty diverse meta, it felt like. Was there any other cool deck in day 2 that you were like specifically caught your eye when you're walking around the tables during the tournament?
Not really, and I didn't play against. Like I said, I didn't play against anything I played against 2 Miltanks, 1 Palkia, 2 Arceus Duraludon. So I didn't play against anything too ridiculous. I guess if I think back on it, I didn't expect to hit 2 Miltanks and 2 Arceus Duraludon in day 2 of each of those, but I didn't play against anything too ridiculous. The Charizard deck is the deck I was going to mention. I think that deck's been super cool. I've been hyping it up a little bit.
Yeah, that we did see the Radiant Heatran on the stream.
The Magma Basin, they Magma Basin for the first time, you're like, do I have to deal with that now? Or like, what's he going to do? You know what I'm saying?
So it was actually pretty wild because in the matchup, it was Alex playing up against Ming, who had the Zekrom deck. And so you only need 2 damage counters on Heatran in order to knock everything out. Ming also did play 1 Miltank, so it was kind of an interesting thing because Ming had 1 Miltank and 2 Ordinary Rod, but Alex had 1 Heatran and 1 Ordinary Rod, and that was his only way to deal with the Miltank was the Radiant Heatran.
Yeah.
But you only need 2 damage counters on the Heatran. So what Alex did was, put the 2 on it. It has 160 hit points, and Zekrom only deals 130 damage. So Ming didn't have a way to KO the Heatran. He couldn't respond and KO it. The only option would have been to use Raichu, and using Raichu to just KO a 1-prizer and put that low HP Pokemon in the active feels pretty tough against like an Arceus or a Charizard deck. Which can easily respond to the KO. So what happened was Ming ended up coming up and hitting it with the Zekrom for 130. So the Heatran has 150 damage on it. Alex plays the switch and then can preserve it, and then later on goes back into it, and he hits for maximum damage. It deals 1,050 damage, which is ridiculous, and I think might be a record for the most damage ever dealt by one attack on stream. It was pretty funny to see.
That definitely sounds like it. Yeah, I think they played Baby Lucky, the 40 snipe one. They could have cleaned it up off the bench. I don't know if Alex played Manaphy or not to protect it from that.
I don't think that Alecki was in there.
Okay, I don't know.
It was just Zekrom and Zapdos, I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correct.
It was definitely a interesting. Yeah, the Lightning Toolbox was definitely cool, for sure. Unfortunately, I don't think it's like quite powerful enough to keep up with the meta, especially if Arceus decks come back. Like that's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Like Sharon's Care, that deck cannot deal with Sharon's Care. Miltank is like, you have to hope they can't KO your Miltank, or I think you're going to be in trouble for sure. But yeah, definitely really cool to see more decks like that pop up, and maybe if the meta becomes a little bit more stabilized, we could definitely see something like that. Be like, okay, this is what I need to beat. Okay, I can do that, right? But I feel like the meta is super open right now. There's so much stuff to account for and worry about that something like that I don't think can quite exist to a point where it could like win a tournament. But definitely cool to see them, do pretty well with it overall. But I can't think of any other like cool decks that I saw in day 2.
One more that I wanted to talk about before we move on is Frank Persick playing the Ice Rider Calyrex. We talked about Ice Rider just a little bit. He ended up getting top 32. He actually just posted the list over on Twitter, said that he was fine sharing it now because he decided he's probably not going to be playing it for NAIC. So he shared his list, and he actually shared his matchups as well. And he went 5-2 against Mew VMAX, and one of the 2 losses was a game that he had a quad prize loss. So effectively, like pretty much 6-1 against Mew VMAX, which is kind of wild.
Yeah, that is, especially because like Ice Rider's always been pretty bad. Is there? I haven't seen I saw some of the list. I don't remember. Is there Path to the Peak in the list?
He's got 3 Path and 1 Collapse Stadium, and his Radiant Pokemon is not Hawlucha. It is Greninja. Did choose to play the Radiant Greninja, probably just for the boosted consistency, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's So it's the B Barrel build. No Inteleon.
Yep.
B Barrel, 2-2 Ice Rider, 2-2 Palkia. So that's like the main energy acceleration you're getting is from the Palkia to the Ice Rider, or you can just attack with the Palkia in a lot of situations. I'm sure Frank attacked with Palkia a ton because if they fill up their bench, you got a choice belt, you're doing 290 damage. So that's KOing most things that you need to KO in the format, and then Ice Rider is there to kind of clean up the rest. And there was also the most interesting thing that I saw was the Ditto, so that way you kind of had like a flex third Ice Rider, third Palkia, so you could like bench Palkia, Ditto, Ice Rider, and no matter which one they KO'd, you'd have the backup of the other one.
Exactly.
So definitely very cool. Heavy on the Irida as well. No research or anything like that. So yeah, really cool list there from Frank. I thought he was just playing Ice Rider Inteleon the whole time. I had seen Frank playing against. That's what I assumed it was, but I saw the tweet yesterday or today or whatever, with the list. I was like, oh, it was B Barrel the whole time. Yeah, definitely a very cool list from Frank, which is to be expected. There's always something cool coming out of Frank for sure.
Yeah, definitely cool. He also plays the Ice Cue in there, kind of the response to Regigigas, I imagine, or the Regi deck. You can't. I guess it's not. I mean, maybe it is Regigigas deck, but just the Regi deck, whatever. And also had the what's that?
Good against Blissey Miltank if they don't have Tornadus.
Yeah, we don't get Tornadus. R.I.P. Azul's gonna be having nightmares.
Nightmares.
And then also did have the Pyukumuku in here. The Pitch of Pyukumuku, just kind of one extra card draw. Another way to just see more cards. Kind of a funny little inclusion. Not something I really expect for players to ever justify being worth the 60th slot, but I mean, I watched a couple of Frank's games play out, and he was pitching that Pyukumuku, man.
It does seem a little awkward. I feel like maybe it's the 4th Trekking Shoes is better. Like opening that just sounds terrible. So, but I guess
but there's so many basics. It's like such low odds to start Pyukumuku and no other basic.
But you don't want to open the Crobat either. So there's only really 9 other Pokemon you could open besides the Puke, to be honest. So I don't know. Kind of feels like Punkaboo odds there if you put the Punkaboo in the Mew. You're still opening it like more than you'd like to. So it's there. It's the Pyukumuku is there. Definitely would have to play. You don't have the other thing like when I look at that is you don't have like level balls, but you do have ultras and quicks, so you can find it a decent amount of the time, I guess. You do want to be pitching it like every turn, ideally, if you can.
Definitely. All right, well, before we get into our discussion on NAIC, we've got some business to attend to, the real important part of this cast, and that is Guess That Flavor Text, where we pick a card from the Pokemon TCG, read that fun little bit of text in the bottom right corner, the flavor text, and the other person tries to guess it. You, of course, along at home, get to guess it with us, so let us know if you get it right down in the YouTube comments below. It is my turn to pick a card for Azul, and our scoreboard is actually all tied up. This is our 15th episode, and we have 2 points apiece. So we haven't done the best overall, and I do think that this is a kind of a hard one, Azul. So I'm not sure if you'll get it. Let's see if you can make it happen, though. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. Okay. When its skin gets wrinkled from moisture, it heads for a volcano. It lies flat on a spot with a lot of geothermal heat and dries itself out.
Is it Salandit?
Is that your guess?
Yes.
It is not Salandit.
No, dude, I was so confident. I was so confident. I don't know why I was. I was just like, it's Salandit. I was just like, I knew it. I was
that
so
might
confident.
be a record for the quickest guess ever.
Oh my God. What is it? What is it?
Wait, so talk me through your thought process a little bit. Why were you so confident?
Like, I don't know. I remember seeing like a picture of a card with Salandit on it. He's just like laying down. It just sounded like it's a fire Pokemon. volcano-y like looking type Pokemon, and then I don't know if his skin gets moist. Like that seems reasonable. I think that's what I would have ended up on no matter. I mean, I guess I could have guessed some stuff, but I was trying to go
You
for the
would
4
not
point.
have ended up on it if you used any of your lifelines. Well, not any, if you'd used several of your lifelines, but for
I was just
anyone playing,
I was just trying to go, dude.
I love the confidence. I
Lock it in,
do
yeah.
love the confidence, but
Oh
you
my
were very wrong.
gosh.
So for anyone playing along at home, I will read or do the lifelines for you, and then we'll take a look at the card. So for the first lifeline, what set the card is from? It is from Fusion Strike. No Salandits in Fusion Strike.
Yeah,
What
I would have known
stage is
that
the
even though.
card? It is a basic Pokemon. Okay. And read an attack name. And its attack name is Let's All Roll Out, which is that attack that deals more damage for each of your benched Pokemon that has the Let's All Roll Out attack.
Is it the the big round rat? No, is it? What is that one called?
Big round rat. I
Yeah,
get.
what is that one
Is it?
called?
Is Sandshrew a big round
No.
rat?
Oh, is it Sandshrew?
It
I would
is
have never gotten
Sandshrew.
Sandshrew. I don't know. I was so confident with Salandit. I was so confident.
Yeah, this is a tough one because it sounds like a fire type Pokemon, to be
Yeah.
honest. And honestly, Salandit was a super good guess. I hadn't even thought about that whenever I picked this card. But yeah, Salandit was a really solid guess. Unfortunately, incorrect this week, Azul. But maybe
What is
one of
Sandshrew
you.
doing by volcanoes?
Yeah, he's just trying to dry his skin out.
I
Thanks to
guess.
the geothermal heat. So let us know down in the YouTube comments if you got the flavor text guess correct this week. And we'll move on to our discussion on NAIC. The North American International Championships are taking place this weekend. It's the biggest tournament of the year. 1,500-ish masters more than likely will be in attendance. One of the most difficult tournaments to win because you have to play it out through your pod. It'll be, seeded into 2 different pods, and then you have to play the best 60-something players from each pod in day 2, and then have to fight it out for top 8. It is a slugfest to make it into cut at NAIC.
Yeah, definitely always second toughest tournament of the year. I feel like pretty much all the time. I don't know. It's kind of hard to compare them because when you compare it to something like OCIC or EUIC, they're smaller, but there's a higher concentration of just top level players.
Yeah.
So you're more likely to hit, a Stefan or a Robin Schultz. The deeper and deeper you go into the tournament, you're just more likely to hit those level of players. But I mean, it's still like being the biggest tournament still like adds a ton of what's it called? Merit to the event or whatever you want to call it, prestige
Definitely.
to it as
Yeah,
well. I still think Worlds is definitely by far the hardest tournament to win because just the overall player level is so much higher on average, every single round of the tournament. But yeah, always a big one every single time because it is the biggest tournament of the year every time. And unfortunately, Stefan will not be able to defend their 2-year or 2-time title. They won the last 2 NAICs and unfortunately won't be able to make it to, as of right now, as far as I know from their tweets from earlier, Stefan won't be there to defend their title, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, he said over on Twitter that went to the airport and there was like some issue with his passport or something, which it said it was like not in good condition, but he's flown with it while it's in this condition over the last couple of years, but then did ultimately say that this one tweet here, he said, finally, after I managed to file a report because his bag got lost as well, he headed home, didn't have his luggage, but at least gained wisdom, by which I mean not that, but instead that I tested positive for COVID. So he did is sick apparently as well. So best wishes to Stefan. I'm definitely bummed that he won't be there because, winning 2 of the hardest tournament ever is pretty ridiculous, or the biggest tournament ever, at least I should say, one of the hardest, certainly. And I know that he definitely wanted to defend his title. He's proud of the fact that he's won it twice and would love to have gone for the three-peat.
Yeah, that definitely sucks. It does kind of like not ruin the event, but like for me personally, as like a competitor, I wanted Stefan to be there, right? Like if I'm winning that event, I wanted Stefan to be in the event as well. So it is kind of like one of those things where it's definitely takes away a little bit from the event, I think, as far as like on the hyper competitive level of things, right? It's still gonna be a great event no matter what, but yeah, it kind of sucks. Wanted to mention that for sure. But hopefully, hopefully can show up to Worlds, no problem. Maybe he has to get a new passport, I guess. But
Yeah, maybe so.
I don't know if you need that if he's gonna be in Europe anyway, so maybe he doesn't need that, but might need to get a
No,
new
probably
passport. I
because
don't know.
London or the UK is not in
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
European Union anymore, right?
Yeah, so make sure you get a new passport, Stefan. We want to see you. We want to see you competing at Worlds. One of the tweets, Stefan was like, "I will be getting top 8 at Worlds now, though." So, just gonna
He's
store
banking
up all
some
the power.
karma.
Yeah, banking some karma for Worlds. Um, but yeah, biggest tournament of the year. And going to be the first international for so many players. The amount of
Yes.
players I ran into at regionals who are like, "Oh, this is my first tournament," is so high. Actually, it was kind of ridiculous so far this year. The amount of players I've ran into who it's their first IRL tournament ever. I mean, even that many more people is going to be their first tournament it's going to be an international tournament. So like, I mean, what do you think that experience is going to be? What was it like at your first tournament, Chip? Actually, like, what was your first? I can't even remember my first one, but you're a little bit more
My
recent than me.
first
Do you remember
regionals.
do you remember your first like
Yeah.
big tournament?
Yeah, my first regionals was the 2015 Virginia Regional Championships. It was like in the fall of, or no, maybe like the spring of 2015.
I think it
No,
was fall. I
no,
remember
the
being
fall
kind of
of
cool.
2015, the fall of 2015. And I actually met you at that tournament, but I had no idea who you were. You definitely had no idea who I was because I was a nobody. And where I was sitting there just watching day 2 play out, I played Evil Tall Maxis at the tournament. I was terrible at the game, didn't really, made plenty of mistakes, I'm sure, but it was a blast. I had a great time, and I was just trying to talk to people and, talk about Pokemon because it was like my new hobby, the thing I was getting into. And then, yeah, I remember sitting there because that was the tournament that Grant was doing well with um, the Magnezone Raikou Eels deck or whatever, right? And I was like sitting there talking to you about that, and I didn't realize like it was a deck that you had like already been working on or something like that. Or maybe I'm thinking a tournament ahead or something.
I think you are a tournament ahead there. Yeah, because that's a tournament where I played Raikou Eels.
Oh, maybe that's
At
why I
one.
was talking to you
Yeah.
about it because I remember being my little scrubby self. Like I had, was super into the game and like just trying to like because there was a lot of expanded tournaments at that time, especially in my area because expanded wasn't quite as ridiculous with how many more sets had been added. I remember like looking at the card pool and thinking like, "Ooh, this new Raikou card that came out actually could be good with this other old card that I've like seen some old YouTube videos and stuff on." And so I think I was like excited about that and talking to you about it during one of the top 8 matches that was happening or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, first tournament, a lot of fun, and that's what my suggestion is to people always when it comes to your first tournament. Just enjoy the moment. You only get your first tournament, your first major once. Don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. Just go with an open mind. Be ready to learn. Be ready to accept that you're probably going to make mistakes. There is definitely a learning curve when it comes to playing at an event like this. You have to deal with actually playing against an opponent as opposed to playing someone online. You got to deal with
Yeah.
judges, you got to deal with gameplay errors, and gameplay errors are just going to happen. It was actually kind of ridiculous this weekend in Milwaukee how many games I was just kind of standing by watching and like noticed a gameplay error happen and be like, hey, make sure you do this. Cause like it would be like someone would take a prize in Trinity Nova and shuffle their deck and then put the deck back. And I'd be like, don't forget to take your prize card.
Dude, that's what happened. I Trinity Nova and forgot my prize cards.
Right. Oh yeah. See, you got a game loss
Yeah.
for or a double prize loss for that, right? So
Yeah, and that's because it's so good. You get to take a knockout. You KO'd one of their Pokemon, so it's gone. You get energy out of your deck and put it on a Pokemon. It's like, why would I also get a prize card for this? That's ridiculous. Like, I'm already doing like so much. But yeah, that's why I forgot to take a prize card because it's like there's so much going on, right? You're like attacking, you're going to your deck, you're getting your energy, deciding where to put them. Sometimes you forget to draw the prize card as well.
So I've actually only ever played in 2 internationals. I played at NAIC in 2017 and NAIC in 2018. I wasn't able to go to the 2019 NAIC. And then I got to commentate EUIC. And I'll be there this weekend as a caster once again. But you've played in probably like almost all of the ICs at this point? Or have you played in literally all of the ICs that have taken place? I guess besides this year's EUIC?
Yeah, this year's UIC, and then I missed the first IC in Australia, and then I think I've been to every IC besides that. I think so. Yeah, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I've
So
been to all the ones in Latin America, all the ones in Brazil. So yeah, I think yeah, I just missed two. I think yeah.
So, I mean, these are international events. There's going to be players here from all over the world. I've already seen people posting, pictures on Twitter of themselves traveling. The travel's already started this week. And, maybe many of the people listening are listening to the cast this week as they're traveling to NAIC. But yeah, I mean, as someone who's played in a bunch of these and played against plenty of international players, I imagine plenty of players that you don't even speak the same language as, or maybe English is their second or third language. So I don't know. Do you have any tips for anyone when it comes to participating in internationals? Maybe like when it comes to communication with a player who doesn't speak English, or that you don't speak their language, or communication when you don't know like what a foreign card does, something like that.
I mean, I think the number one thing with most of that kind of stuff is just don't be afraid to call over a judge. Like, I mean, and you're not doing it in like a malicious way. I think that's actually like such a big thing with players in general, especially when like gameplay errors actually are happening. People are just like afraid to call over judges, but
Well,
like,
people think that it's like you're calling them out, like if you're calling a judge over,
yeah,
but it's like a
yeah,
judge just comes over to fix things. It's not necessarily that anyone did anything bad. Sometimes you
yeah.
just did something wrong or made a mistake, and you have to get someone over there, a third party that can come correct it. That's what the judges are there for.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be afraid to call over. I think if something like truly, um, game breaking happens, like what I always say is like, if my opponent by accident draws an extra card, I just tell them to put it back on top of their deck, right? Because I show up to be my opponent in game of Pokemon. But if your opponent's playing a foreign card, or you don't know what they're saying and they're trying to explain something that's going on the board state that is incorrect, or your opponent plays two supporters, or you play two supporters, or someone ends up with an extra energy in play, just like
Yeah.
call over a judge for those things that can't be fixed. Like it's not that big of a deal to call over judge. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It feels like like people are afraid. They don't want to be the bad guy,
Yeah.
right? People feel like when you're calling over a judge, you're being the bad guy, right? But it's like if the other person is a reasonable person, especially a reasonable competitor, they'll respect the fact that you want to call over a judge for whatever reason. And if you want to like explain it to your opponent first, if you can, but especially if you're playing against someone who doesn't speak your language, then you got no choice but to call over a judge. So you can hopefully get someone over who can like translate and actually get some communication between you and your opponent. So yeah, just don't be afraid to call over a judge for pretty much for most things in the game, right?
Yeah,
Just
they have
not
people
that
there who
not
are
that big of a deal.
literally there are people and are judges there who are literally there as translators. Like that is their
Yeah.
main function and main role is to be a translator for all the various languages that'll be spoken at the tournament. So don't be afraid to call a judge over, for sure. I don't know any other tips as far as like gameplay or enjoying yourself or just the experience overall.
Yeah, I mean, just try and have a good time doing what you like to do. Like at an event or outside of an event, especially if you're there with friends or whatever, go do something in the new city you've never been to or the new area you've never been to
The
or
beautiful city
stuff
of
like that.
Columbus.
Yeah, I mean Ohio, but yeah, just try and enjoy yourself no matter what. Don't stress too much about your deck choice or anything like that. Just show up and play Pokemon. It is the biggest event of the year, but like but no one really takes it. I mean, I guess like people take it a little bit more seriously, but not really to the extent that I feel like the pressure some people put on themselves. Like, no one's really taking the event that serious. If you want to, you can, but I think having a good time is just as important as trying to win the event and or do well, whatever your goal might be for the event, day 2, top 64, whatever it might be. Especially some people are chasing their invites here at
Yeah.
the end of it all. I guess I could talk to that. Like, don't be. I mean, this scenario comes up a lot. The I don't want to say pressure, but some people are playing to try and get top 64 or top 256 to try and get their invite. Don't feel like you need to scoop to someone or help someone out who needs those last couple points, right? If you want to play your game and walk away with the dub at the end of whatever round it might be, that's fine, right? Um,
Yeah, and
I
I'll
know.
say something to this
Go ahead.
because I was actually in that exact situation in 2017. 2017 was the year where the world's points were just massively messed up. The requirement threshold earlier in the season was really high, and then they had to drop it mid-season because only like 5 people had qualified for worlds or something like that. They messed up pretty much, and so it was a really weird season. But I needed to get top 128 at NAIC in order to secure my invite to Worlds. And I went into it knowing like I need this, But if I don't get it, it means I didn't earn it. Even though Pokemon,
Yeah.
that season's maybe a little different because Pokemon kind of messed up with how the structure and all worked. But I didn't want to ask someone or say to someone, "Hey, I need this win to get my World's invite," because I wanted to earn my World's invite. It was going to be my first invite if I got it, and it came down to my last round. In round 9, if I won, I was going to get top 128 to get points. If I lost, I was not going to get top 256. I think maybe it was. I don't remember exactly, but I think I just needed
In your
points.
pod.
Yes, yeah, top 120 at my pod or whatever. And so that's what it came down to. And I did not say a word to my opponent. I did not say, "Hey, I really need this win to get my invite." I just sat down and I played the game. And it was a close game, but I ended up winning. I got my World's invite, and I shared it with my opponent afterwards. I was like, "Hey, just so you know, I won the game, and this win gets me my invite." And they were super excited for me. It was a super nice guy. But yeah, I mean, just there's going to be a situation almost certainly for someone who's listening where someone tells you, "Hey, I really need this win to get my invite, or I need to get these points to get my invite." Don't let that pressure you into you conceding to someone. You do not owe anyone a free win. You owe
Yeah.
yourself whatever goal you have set for yourself, right? So play to
Yeah.
win the game. Don't worry about what anyone else has to say or what's going on. And just, and to anyone who is in that position where they need points to get your invite, this season is another situation similar, I guess, to 2017, where things are kind of messed up because we're playing
Yeah,
two
just a
halves of
bit.
seasons and we didn't get cups for the second half of the season. So I mean, it's a tough spot for a lot of people I know, but at the same time, you know what you need to get. Don't put that pressure on your opponent. You know what you need to do, so you need to go out and do it. You need to go do the thing. You need to win your games, play cleanly, pick a good deck, put the pressure on yourself to make it happen. Don't try to flip it onto your opponent to try to get a win when they owe nothing to you.
Yeah, definitely want to mention that because that's definitely something. It's going to come up a lot. This is the last event to get points at. So I know a couple players out there who need their invites who are looking for those last couple points, and I'm sure there's tons more that I don't know. And I mean, anyone with at least 100 points, if they win the event, can get their invite. So there's a
That's
lot of
right.
players out there who can get their invite, right?
And
Some of
we've
them
seen the
need a little bit
last
more than
3
others.
major tournaments have been won by players who it was their first top 8.
Yeah,
Braden, Parker Lish, and then Luke Smith in Secaucus. That was their first top 8s in the Masters division. I know Luke had won a regionals as a senior. But yeah, I mean, so it just goes to show you, like, I mean, these tournaments are tough. I think it is probably a little bit less likely that at an international someone would make their first cut and then find themselves be the champion, but it definitely can happen. I mean,
yeah,
the Braden, it was his first top cut, he beat Tord in top 8, the best player in the game right now. So
yeah.
anything can happen in a game of Pokemon, man.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit harder. You're gonna have all the great players from all the regions coming to this one. With any IC, yeah, the ICs is gonna be a little bit more difficult for that to happen, or to even have someone who hasn't made a top 8 or like won a regionals even be in the top 8, right? Like, I feel like usually when you look at the top 8 of ICs, like everyone who's in there is usually someone who's like been at least in a top 8 of a regional
Right.
before, right? So,
Yeah.
definitely a little bit more difficult at the ICs, but yeah,
I
you
mean,
never
hey,
know.
at
You
EUIC
really never
this year,
know.
we did see Mateus get top 4, and it was his first
Yeah,
top 8. So, or top,
that's
yeah,
true.
and ended up getting top 4. So it can happen
It
for
happens. It
sure.
happens.
So
Yeah.
yeah, let's try to wrap this up in about 15 minutes or so if we can. Let's run through these decks. We've talked about kind of the results from Milwaukee. So starting with Palkia. Is Palkia still the deck to beat, and which way is the best to play it as far as the techs go? Are you playing Cross Switcher? Are we playing Irida? Are we playing Crobat? What do we think?
Um, I mean, I think definitely Inteleon over Turbo. I guess I'll mention that first. As far from that goes, like everything feels pretty good. Like that's what I was saying before. Like everything feels good. I like VIP passes for sure. You should definitely be playing some count of Battle VIP Pass. I think it's just kind of like not. It's basically mandatory. Like, it almost. Well, I guess if you're not playing Irida or kind of the more turbo build that
Like a
that
Mew?
Bradner and crew were playing, then I guess maybe like if you play like the Riley build, I guess Battle VIP Pass feels awkward in that build because at least with the Irida you have so many more outs to turn on Battle VIP Pass going second, which is like which is like the scariest. That's the scary part about Palkia is when you go second in like the mirror or in quite a few matchups, to be honest. Like when you go second, you're like, all right, let's see how this goes. That's when it can get kind of scary. So that's why like the Battle VIP Pass makes everything so much smoother because you just get a bunch of basics in play turn one. But I guess if you're drawing the extra cards with something like Riley's list with like the Crobat or Research, then that will get you, hopefully those extra basic Pokemon. But the Irida kind of guarantees it. Getting your Battle VIP Pass and whatever. So I think I do kind of like the Irida Battle VIP Pass a little bit more. It's also just like really consistent about just finding everything you need every single turn. And you don't actually need that much as Palkia every single turn. You don't need to research for 7 cards to find, a bucket and a Palkia V-Star when you could just play Irida, hold your 5-card hand or whatever it was, and then go get your bucket and your Battle VIP and your Palkia V-Star, right? So I kind of lean towards like in the Irida stuff a little bit better because like you actually just don't need that much as Palkia turn to turn, so you may as well just guarantee it and kind of build on your hand and like always have every single option moving forwards instead of losing some of them to a research.
So whenever a deck like Arceus Duraludon just wins the last regionals, it feels like Mew players weren't really respecting it. They're playing all special energy and no echoing horn, so that matchup's going to be a little bit tougher. It feels well positioned against things like the Palkia V Star. Is it something players need to be concerned for and have a game plan going into NAIC now, facing the fact that it had a win, or are the people who wanted to play Duraludon going to be a little too worried to play it now that it did just win the last tournament?
I think the meta is just so diverse. I guess like talking about like you mentioned like is Palkia the BDIF or like I think I would like going into
Is
this
it the
event
deck to beat still?
Deck to beat. I still want to beat. I would be fine. Like I said earlier, I think I said this earlier. Like I would be fine taking the loss to Mew, like a hard
Yes,
loss
yeah.
to Mew, like unwinnable, as long as I made sure I like had a hard win against Palkia and Teleon, right? Like I have to find trade off. So for Arceus Duraludon, like I don't think you have that much to because the meta is so diverse because of that. Like that's part of it. It's like the meta's just like so diverse right now. If you guys gonna get more diverse going into NAIC, I think it's fine to like Arceus Duraludon. I think it's just like a fine deck to play. I'm not a huge fan of it personally. I think it's a little bit. It doesn't play, like I said, it doesn't play enough games. Even though it has Arceus in there, I still feel like it is a little bit clunkier. So I'm not a huge fan of the deck. I don't think I'm gonna play it myself. But if you're an Arceus Duraludon fan, or like you liked it, you like the deck, and you seeing it win, like makes you be like, oh, actually, it is viable when I thought it wasn't. I think I do want to play that. Then I would say go for it. And but although I would also say if you're playing Mew, I would also include Echoing Horn. But
Yes, yeah.
it doesn't mean you shouldn't play Arceus Duraludon, I don't think. But I would like. It's also really good against Blissey Miltank as well. So like I think Echoing Horn just makes also with Arceus decks in general coming back, like it just makes sense for
Arceus
Echoing
and
Horn to come back
Teleon.
into Mew. Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't be scared of playing Arceus Duraludon even if it did win. There's not too much that actually hard counters Arceus Duraludon to begin with, like Echoing Horn to Mew. That's pretty annoying. But everything else can't really do too much. Like even Tord had the Starmie, which is a pretty good card to have in that matchup. But still Braden was able to beat Tord, so it's good for the matchup, but it doesn't like auto win the matchup by any means. So like even stuff that people can play, there's no real like hard counter to Arceus Duraludon, I guess. Maybe 2 Echoing Horn in Mew would be pretty annoying.
So, are you going to respect Miltank this weekend? Are you going to play a deck that has either a hard answer, or are you going to make sure that you at least have like a winnable game plan against it?
At least Blissey Miltank, I guess. If someone has the Miltank control stall sauce, then
You're not
they
worried
can
about
probably
that.
have
Yeah.
that one.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, if I hit bump into them and they got me, I think. But I think I'd at least make sure I can have it out to Blissey Miltank, like the Shauna that I played in the Arceus Flying Peak. Now you maybe have to take account for the Tornadus, I guess, which is fair. So now you have to be like, okay, so not only do I have to play now the Shauna doesn't work in a deck like that, so maybe you have to come up with something else like a Phoebe or something. That's actually another card we were considering, was like Phoebe in the Big Peak Arceus deck. We're like Phoebe or Shauna, which one's better?
Is
We ended
canceling
up on
clone not
Shauna.
better than Phoebe? Oh, I guess you can pal
You
pad for
can
the
pal
Phoebe.
pad, yeah.
Yeah.
Canceling Clone is such a weak card. I hate that card. It's so weak. But yeah, the Phoebe was like a consideration, so you could like do a Phoebe in there if you wanted to, and then you kind of just like play a more aggressive tempo game against them, where you're just constantly swinging. You're either bossing up their Blissey, or you're hopefully having the Phoebe to get through the Miltank and so on. So you just play like a more aggressive route against them. So you can just do that, something like that. But I think I would just have it, yeah, for Blissey Miltank. I just like somehow because that also beat like some of the fringe Miltank shenanigans. Like I've seen there's people who are just like playing one of Miltanks in like random stuff as well. Like I saw one of Miltank in like an Arceus B barrel deck. They just had a Miltank, right? Like that kind of stuff is just really annoying to deal with, and sometimes impossible to deal with depending on what you're playing. So I think just like if you're beating Blissey Miltank, if you have an out to Blissey Miltank, you'll beat a lot of the fringe Miltank stuff anyways. But not like the hard like quad Miltank decks that might be a thing, but like you'll beat all like the little Miltank shenanigans.
Okay, so if you know going into this weekend that you want to announce Starbirth and Trinity Nova a few different times, what color card are you playing alongside it? Are we going with the Dragon type? We going with the Flying Pikachu with some Lightnings? Are we sticking to Waters with straight Intellion? One of the decks that I really was actually a fan of watching play out was the deck that Jose Marrero played. He had the Flying Pikachu with the Hisuian Decidueye V-Star, which I think coming off of Blissey doing pretty well. I mean, Blissey's honestly a deck I could see players just being like, you know what? This was just proven that it can do pretty well. It is a pretty linear strategy. Obviously, like at the highest level, there's more intricate plays to be made, but I mean, overall, base level, pretty straightforward of what you want to do.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see plenty of players picking up Miltank. So or picking up Blissey, I should say. So that would make me want to lean towards maybe that. I was definitely a big fan of Jose's list after I saw it.
Yeah, the Decidueye is like okay. Like adds another like the reason I didn't like the Decidueye going into the event is because like majority of Miltank players were playing Crushing Hammers, so you have to play like 2 basic fighting energy, and then you can't really play like you can't go Crobat VMAX basic fightings and basic lightnings. But you could, like I said, like taking a loss to Mew, and even then, like with that kind of deck specific, it's not a loss to Mew. You still have Marnie Path, Roxanne Path, right? So you still have that as an option. So I would say the Decidueye, yeah, Decidueye would be a decent shout for sure, something over like the Phoebe. But then you do have to kind of splash into the fighting energy pool. But both Miltanks I played up against neither had like Connor didn't play Crushing Hammer, and then the other player I played against in Swiss Day 2 didn't have Crushing Hammer either. So it seems like the successful Miltanks don't play the Crushing Hammer. So I mean, maybe you can be like, oh, okay, well now if no one expects a Crushing Hammer and Miltank, I'm going to play them, but then your deck's just bad at that point. It seems like. So I guess your end result will be not good. So from what we've seen, also Shintaro wasn't playing Crushing Hammer in the Miltank either, I believe. So, I mean, it seems like the Crushing Hammers are not the way to go. To just be a little bit more consistent, straightforward seems to be the way to go for the Blissey Miltank. So, yeah, the Decidueye is pretty good if they're not going to play the Crushing Hammers. But that's why I was kind of turned off from the Decidueye initially. But without Crushing Hammers being in there, then it is like a consistent answer for sure. But I think I would prefer the Pikachu, the Flying. Like I just felt like I played so many games of Pokemon. Yeah, I just like the Inteleon build is good. Like Shady Dealings is nice, but using Crobat's also nice, and just having more draw supporters turn 1 is also nice. Being able to Trinity charge, the amount of times I Trinity charge turn 1 was so high because the Flying Pikachu has free retreat. So you either open the Arceus or the Flying Pikachu, or you hit your switch card and you're just like turn 1 Trinity charge, and you're just like Trinity charging all the time. So it just felt so much more like I just felt like I had such a good place on my turn 1 to turn 2. Like the first 2 turns of the game, I felt like I was in such a good, solid place, like pretty much every single game. So I like the B-Barrel Arceus decks for sure, I think, over the other 2.
So where were you at going into this weekend on Mew VMAX? Was that something, I mean, I imagine it was something you were talking about or considering at least a little bit, even though on the podcast, we said you were done with it. But, I mean, you're talking about for NAIC, it's something that you feel like you'd be okay taking a loss to. So if you're someone who likes to play Mew VMAX, that's probably something you're loving to hear Azul saying on the cast this week. I don't know. Where do you feel like Mew stands going into this tournament, and where was it at for you guys going into Milwaukee?
So it was a pretty high, like it's probably the 3rd pick as far as decks goes. Like our Palkia was probably the number 1 pick, and then Peak ended up being the actual pick, and then Mew was the other pick outside of that, I feel like, for us for sure. But none of us wanted to play Mew, so but I feel like the reason I'm like okay taking a loss, and I think Mew's in a really good spot. Like I think it was a really good play for Milwaukee as far as matchup spread goes, and I think it gets better going into NAIC. But as far as like the reason I'm taking a loss to it, even if that's true, is just like it's like the popularity is going down. It's not like it's a matchup spread is getting better. I feel like less people are teching for it, but it's not like you're actually like better than Palkia Intel as far as matchup spread goes or anything like that. Like you don't actually have like that much big of an advantage, and you're still Mew as well, so you have like less control over games. And I feel like you do kind of play less games than the other top decks in like Arceus and Palkia decks. So that's like another reason to like not play the deck, I guess. And then I mean, top players in the game consistently, besides a couple like Rowan and stuff, just don't play the deck. So if my goal is to win the event, I probably don't have to beat Mew if I get to top 8 to win the event, So that's kind of the thought process there. Is like, that's why I'm fine losing to it. I think it's a really good play, but I'm probably not going to play it. And I don't expect to have to beat it if I can get to top 8 probably, unless Rowan gets top 8 as well. I guess that'd be the only the only situation where I'd probably have to play against it. But
All
that's
right,
kind of the
everyone, go
thought
ahead and
behind me
clip
right
it, save it, make sure we have it for when Azul inevitably plays Mew this weekend, and yeah, we'll see
I
what happens.
wouldn't like. I wouldn't be, if I did pick it. I wouldn't be like that surprised because like I think Catcher Mew is just really if the deck's just really really good and like less people are worried about it. Like it's the further we get into this meta, like less people are worried about Mew. So it's a good pick for sure. But like I wouldn't want to play it because I just don't think it's going to be a deck to win the event for sure.
And then one
Never
more
know, though.
deck that we didn't really talk about this for the Milwaukee section of the cast, but it did do pretty well. Nick Moffitt got top 16 with this, and that is the Regigigas. Was pretty heavily played, I feel like. Didn't get into the top 8. Nick did the best though with top 16, which is still very solid, obviously. And he was playing an interesting list with the Cramomatics, which is certainly surprising. But yeah, I don't know where we got Azul's getting a visitor or something. We want to have a guest spot on the cast. He's saying go. Azul is pointing and saying go. Okay, so Regigigas, how do you feel about it for NAIC? It was pretty heavily played, but didn't really convert the best besides Nick's list.
Yeah, it was there was a lot of them. I played against one. I think I played against Nick. Nick was the only Reggie I played against.
And I think Nick said on Twitter that his only losses, I think two of them were Duraludon, which is just a tough
Yeah.
matchup. He didn't play Path to the Peak, so didn't have that answer. And then one other, let me see if I can.
Was Flying Pikachu, and I
Okay.
would have if I didn't get Nick is who I got the double prize penalty against. So if I didn't get that against Nick, I would also 2-0'd Nick in that one, but it didn't go that way.
L.
But it's a good, but another Flying Pikachu on that list potentially. But I think the deck, I just don't think the deck is actually that good. So like I thought it was a meme. Then I was really hype on it. The more I played it, I just don't think it actually has a very good Palkia and Teleon matchup, like at all. Like I was actually like shocked to see that Riley played 2 Temple of Sinnoh, because I think you beat it without Temple of Sinnoh pretty consistently. Like I think the matchup is at the worst 50-50 if you just include Roxanne. So yeah, I don't know. I just the deck if you can't beat Palkia and Teleon and they're weak to lightning, if you can't beat them consistently and they're weak to lightning, like what do you beat? You know, not a huge fan of. Okay, I wish I was though, because the deck is like super cool, but yeah
definitely.
haven't been.
It's a good stream deck, right?
Since. Yeah, I've been a huge streamed it a lot, but yeah, I've been a huge fan since I've tested it more. I guess like more seriously testing out the deck. It just didn't feel as good as I thought it was.
Okay, any other decks that you think players should consider or maybe have on their radar when it comes to preparing for the event this weekend? You know, we mentioned some of the other things that made day 2 in Milwaukee, the Dialgas, Samurots. We saw not Turbo Dark, but like a slow Dark deck on the stream. It was like Galarian Wheezing with Darker IV Star. And I do think there's some merit to Galarian Wheezing right now. I think that card isn't too bad. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, the Weezing seems cool. I don't know if it's with Turbo Dark or not. What I've said about Darkrai specifically is like I kind of gave up on trying to make it work, but I think there might be something there that to make it work. I just don't know what it is. Like I've tried it initially as like the first deck I built, I feel like. Maybe second. Yeah, like first deck I built on stream after Astral Radiance came out. I was like, I worked on it for quite a bit, but I was like, it's just too hard to make this thing work, and I'm not gonna be the one to devote the time to make this work. I'd rather just play all the other new decks and learn those instead. And so far we haven't seen it work really to the extent that I feel like there's maybe the potential there. I know Sosa has been playing a lot of Turbo Dark, so if Sosa goes to NAIC, maybe Sosa has cracked it. If someone's going to, might as well be the Patch King. So we'll see if Sosa has figured it out. But Dialga, I think the Dialga deck, like the Turbo Dialga build itself, super good. We'll see if that maybe shows up a little bit more. We didn't really see. You said there was like one stream of that in day 2. Maybe we could see some more of that popping up at NAIC for sure. It's been super popular in online events recently, so maybe see a little bit more of that carry over to NAIC specifically, because there was not a whole ton of it at Milwaukee for sure.
Well, I think that's going to wrap up our thoughts on NAIC. I'm super excited for this event. If you guys are going to the tournament and you want to come say hello to either myself or Azul, we will have more dice. We haven't even mentioned this yet. The dice was a huge hit. I gave out all of the dice I brought. So yeah, I gave out all the ones I brought on Friday at the event. Like I didn't have any to give out on Saturday. I had to give Azul his dice. So yeah, we'll have more of them to give out at NAIC. Hopefully enough. Probably not
I
gonna
don't
be
think
though.
so.
We'll we'll do another wave, like a different color, probably in the future. You know, maybe
Yeah.
next season sometime. But yeah, try to come up and get one if you can. If you already got one, please don't come and get another one because we want to make sure everyone has a chance to get their hands on one if they want it. But yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Azul, I'm really excited for this weekend. I'm sure you're excited as well. I know you guys are going to be probably doing a lot of testing this week as you're trying to figure out what the play is. So good luck in that. If you guys want to support the cast, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, check out the new highlights channel. It will be linked in the description, of course. You can follow me on Twitter at TrainerChip. You can follow Azul at Azul_GG. And you can also, of course, follow the podcast Twitter as well at Uncommon_Energy.
Yeah. Appreciate it as always. See you guys next week. Peace.
Peace.